fucking kidding me right now? That's not what I wanted. I wanted. Why is my connection bad? Why? What do you mean connection unstable? What do you mean? It'd be really cool. TikTok's just being an ass. Was saying my connection's unstable again, and I could have swore it started going to therapy. It told me it would change. I'm pretty sure my Wi-Fi is getting better. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, TikTok's being an asshole. In several ways. This is just one of the many. It keeps telling me I have an unstable connection almost every single week now. And it never used to do that. My Wi-Fi has not changed. So, yeah. I don't know what's different now. I don't know why now. I don't know why. And then it won't let me have any of my lives. Any of them. I heard you. I didn't forget about the sound clip you all wanted. It's just the unfortunate reality is that I can't get it. So I'm gonna have to re-record that one too. And I was already having to re-record the end of Hollow City because it wouldn't let me have those either. So, which I'm almost done with. I technically have both of them recorded and they're over half edited. But then I also have to do chapter 2 because it didn't let me have that either. But it let me have chapter 1 and 1.5. It just won't let me have 2, and it won't let me have Hollow City. And then sometimes it tells me it's unavailable, and then for kicks I go back and try and download it later, and okay, it gives it to me. And then it lets me have it. Like 2 weeks after I need it, it lets me have it again, and I'm like, you said I couldn't have this one. Why did you say that if it was a lie? So then, one, I thought I was going to have to record from the end of Hollow City, and then it gave it to me later. And then I was like, okay, so I could have it this whole time. You could have given it to me this whole time, is what I'm hearing, and then you just didn't. So, like, what's the deal? Can I have it or can I not? And if you're going to tell me that I can't have it, and then later you can be like, oh yeah, you can have that, like, then what was the point of telling me the first time that I couldn't have it? Anyway, I'm just mildly annoyed right now. Is it because I'm complaining about it? Maybe if I sing TikTok's praises through a whole live, it'll let me immediately have it and download the content. Maybe that's the secret. I stop complaining about it. And then they're like, it's like Big Brother. They know when you're talking about them. And then they won't let you have your own content because you spoke bad about it. Anyway, it's fine. I'm just so annoyed. I do hours worth of content and then TikTok's like, yeah, did you want your stuff that you made? And I'm like, yeah, I would like that. And they're like, too bad. Irritating. So it's fine. I've already got part of the chapter from last week also recorded, so I can take the sound clip from that if you all want it. And don't worry, they sing the song again. So I don't know if we'll get to it today because they do sing the song again. But it's like at the tail end of this chapter. And this chapter is long, so I'm going to go ahead and preface that. It's long. It's like 62 pages long. So it's a long chapter. So we probably won't make it all the way through, or at least I won't make it all the way through. I have to read it out loud. So Yeah, we'll probably only make it through half. Um, so yeah, that'll be fun. There's probably going to be another two-parter. Unfortunately, the chapters are kind of wonky, as you all know. So like, we'll do what we can. We'll do what we can with the time that we have. But also, just a little bit of a thank you. Someone sent me coffee. It was Lady Eva, because Lady Eva's so nice. Um, and it's like a mystery flavor. And I tried it earlier, and I'll get back to you on what I think the mystery flavor is. It's just so familiar, and it makes me think that they repackaged one that they didn't completely sell out of, because I remember the smell, and it's so familiar, but I can't pinpoint it. But I know it. I feel like I've had it before because it smells so familiar. I smelled it through the bag, and I was like, I feel like I know. I feel like I've had it. Anyway, I'll get back to you on that. I have to experiment with it for a little bit more. Because I'm gonna try, because I just made a little bit of it to taste today, and I was like, I know what this is, but I'm so stuck on that. It's so familiar that I can't guess what it is. So like, I'm gonna have to separate myself from I guess the nostalgia factor, because I'm like, I've smelled this before, and it feels so familiar. I can't get over it. So I'm too busy trying to guess what I think it is rather than just tasting it. That's what I think I'm getting hung up on. It is good. It is good. You know what I know? It's good. God, stop smelling it. Okay, we all have time for this later. I also got it today, so then, like, I was also doing stuff while I was trying to figure out what it was. So I kept getting hung up on, like, I'm in the middle of this thing, I have to complete this thing, and then, but what is it though? And so it's hindered a lot of my activity for the day, but it has been delicious. Anyway, we'll enough about my coffee problems. I hope you all are doing okay. So sorry, not really. I appreciate it. I will never turn down coffee. Sometimes I'm like, guys, I have enough coffee. You don't have to get me coffee, but I always appreciate coffee because I drink too much of it. Gotta get that coffee thing. Yeah, I had to drink coffee anyway, so I was like, well, might as well be this new one. I all right. We have a lot of content to cover today, so are we ready for that? Bones. Bones sends me emails of sales. They say he returns. So, they go, oh, we got reserved. You, oh yeah, you don't. Oh, I hope you can get coffee soon. I miss coffee, and I have it every day. It's so unfortunate. Don't you like get to like come back to, or are you? Are you just gonna stay there? That's none of my business. That's your business. You don't have to tell me where you're at. Um, I also love Bones Coffee. I have so much of Bones Coffee that I'm working through. Uh, I was gonna say, I was like, it's not my business, but you are coming back. Okay, and good to know. We're still gonna call you Korea though. I That's not changing. We can't change it now. It's locked in. So we got a lot of content to cover. Who wants to get into it? Are we ready? Or are we? You got your beverages and your pets and your comfortable blankets and your squishmallows? Is everybody good? Are there new people in here who don't know what's going on? You don't have to tell me if you're new, but like if you are new, we don't. I don't talk. I do. I talk a lot, but just not about. I just read to you. I don't do normal lives where you talk to people, and I just read you a bedtime story, and that's what we do. And I've been reading the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. We're on book 3, chapter 2. If you don't know what that be, then maybe you could go to my YouTube and figure it out, because that's where we left off. Chapter 2 hasn't been uploaded yet, so that's like a problem. But it's not like a super big problem, because I'm gonna get it fixed, swear. Alright, and last we left off, for the people that were here or may have missed last time, Emma, Addison, and Jacob go into the Devil's Acre, accompanied by Sharon on his boat tour, and shit doesn't go well for them. They go through about 5 minutes of a boat tour before shit goes all to hell. The Hollow comes back. Shit in Devil's Acre is a lot weirder than people thought, and they almost get discovered. But Jacob seems to have formed a pretty good relationship with the Hollow, enough to rescue them. But then the Hollow dies. And then they're just left with Sharon, who promptly wants nothing to do with them and tries to leave. But Sharon is a little bit friendlier than we thought originally, and he comes back to help. So that's where we left off, and that's what you missed out on Glee. And I'll have that chapter uploaded as soon as I can. And now we're going to start chapter 3. Who's ready? 42. I'll get the bun. Oh, okay. Alright, sweet. There's a lot of voices in this one that I'm kind of nervous about. I hope I will be able to do them by the time that I reach them. Alright. Chapter 3. Just before a cow was put to the hammer in a modern slaughterhouse, it is prodded through a winding maze. The tight curves and blind corners prevent the animal from seeing more than a short distance ahead, so it doesn't realize until the last few steps when the maze abruptly narrows and a metal collar clamps tight around its neck, where the journey has taken it. But as the three of us hurried after Sharon into the heart of Devil's Acre, I felt sure I knew what was coming, if not when, nor how. With each step and each turn, we threaded deeper inside a knot, one I feared we'd never work apart. The fetid air did not move, its only outlet an uneven crack of sky high above our heads. The bulged and slumping walls were so narrow that we had to go shoulder first in places, the tight spots greased black by the clothes of those who'd gone before. There was nothing natural here, nothing green, nothing living at all, save scurrying vermin and the bloodshot-eyed revenants who lurked behind doorways and under grates in the street, and who surely would have jumped at us if not for our towering black-clad guide. We were chasing Death himself into the pit of hell. We turned and turned again. Every passage looked just like the one before it. There were no signs, no markers. Either Sharon was navigating by some brilliant feat of memory, or completely at random, trying to throw off any ditch pirates who might have been pursuing us. "Do you really know where we're going?" Emma asked him. "Of course I do," Sharon barked, bombing around a corner without looking back. Then he stopped, doubled back, and stepped down through a doorway sunk half below street level. Inside was a dank cellar, just 5 feet high, and lit by the merest breath of sallow gray light. We ran hunched along a subterranean corridor, discarded animal bones underfoot, the ceiling brushing our heads past things I tried not to see. A slumped figure in a corner, sleepers shivering on miserable mats of straw, a boy in rags lying on the ground with a beggar's pail bangled around one arm. At its far end the passage widened into a room, and in the light of a few grimed windows there knelt a pair of miserable washerwomen scrubbing laundry in a stinking pool of ditch water. Then we mounted more steps and went out, thank God, into a walled courtyard common to the backs of several buildings. In some other reality it might have contained a happy patch of grass or a little gazebo. But this was Devil's Acre, and it was a dump in a pigsty. Waves of fly-brown trash tossed from windows crested against the walls, and in the center, staked crookedly in the mud, was a wooden pen in which a skinny boy stood guarding an even skinnier pig. Just one. By a mud brick wall, a woman sat smoking and reading a newspaper while a young girl stood behind her, picking nits from her hair. The woman and girl took no notice as we trooped past, but the boy leaned the tines of a pitchfork at us. When it was clear we had no designs on his pig, he sank into an exhausted squat. Here are some pictures. Yeah. Emma stopped in the middle of the yard to look up at lines of laundry strung between roof gutters. She pointed out again that our blood-stained clothes made us look like participants in a murder and suggested we should change. Sharon replied that murders were hardly outlandish here and urged her on, but she hung back, arguing that a white in the underground had seen our blood-stained clothes and radioed his comrades about us. They made us too easy to pick out of a crowd. Really, I think it was more that she felt uncomfortable in a blouse now stiff with another person's blood. I did too, and if we found our friends again, I didn't want them to see us like this. Sharon grudgingly assented. He'd been leading us toward a fence at the edge of the yard, but now pivoted and took us into one of the buildings. We climbed 2, 3, 4 flights of stairs, until even Addison was wheezing, then followed Sharon through an open door into a small, squalid room. A gash in the ceiling had let it rain, and warped in the landing like ripples in a pond. Black mold veined the walls. At a table by a smoky window, 2 women and a girl were sweating over foot-powered sewing machines. "We need some clothes," Sharon said, addressing the women in a senatorium basso that shook the thin walls. Their pale faces looked up. One of the women picked up a sewing needle and gripped it like a weapon. "Please," she said. Sharon reached up and pulled back the hood of his cloak a little so that only the seamstress could see his face. They gasped, then whimpered, and fainted forward onto the table. "Was that really necessary?" I said. "Not strictly," Sharon replied, replacing his hood. "But it was expedient." The seamstress had been assembling simple shirts and dresses from scraps of cloth. The rags they worked with were heaped around the floor, and the results, which had more patches and seams than Frankenstein's monster, were hung on a line out the window. As Emma reeled them in, my gaze crawled around the room. It was clearly more than just a workspace. The women lived here, too. There was a bed nailed together from scrap wood. I peered into a dented pot that hung in the hearth and saw the makings of starvation soup, fish skin, and withered cabbage leaves. There were half-hearted attempts at decorating, a sprig of dried flowers, a nailed to the mantel, framed portrait of Queen Victoria, were somehow sadder than nothing at all. Despair was tangible here, weighting down everything. The air. I'd never been confronted with such pure misery. Could peculiars really be living these discarded lives? As Sharon pulled in an armful of shirts through the window, I asked him. He seemed almost offended by the idea. Peculiars would never allow themselves to be so reduced. These are common slum dwellers, trapped in an endless repetition of the day this loop was made. Normals occupy the acre's festering edges, but its heart belongs to us. They were normals. Not only that, but loop-trapped normals, like the ones on Cairnholm, whom the crueler kids would torment during games of Raid the Village, as much a part of the background scenery as the sea or the cliffs, I told myself. But somehow, looking at the women's weathered faces buried in rags, I felt no less terrible about stealing from them. I'm sure we'll know the peculiars when we see them, Emma said, sorting through a pile of dirty blouses. One always does, said Addison. Oh, sorry. One always does, said Addison. Subtlety has never been our kind strength. I slipped out of my bloody shirt and traded it for the least filthy alternative I could find, the kind of garment you'd be issued at a prison camp, collarless and striped, its sleeves of unequal length, patched together from cloth rougher than sandpaper. But it fit me, and with the addition of a simple black coat I found tossed over a chairback, I now looked like someone who might plausibly be from this place. We turned our backs while Emma changed into a sack-like dress that pooled around her feet. It'll be impossible to run in this, she grumbled. Plucking a pair of scissors from the seamstress's table, she began to alter it with all the care of a butcher, ripping and jabbing until she'd sliced off the bottom at the knee. There. She admired her rough handiwork in a mirror. A bit raggedy, but... Without thinking, I said, Horace can make you a better one. Somehow, I'd forgotten that our friends weren't just waiting for us in the next room. I mean, if we see them again. Don't, Emma said. For an instant, she looked so sad, absolutely lost in it. And then she turned away, put down the scissors, and moved purposefully toward the door. When she turned to face us again, her expression had gone hard. Come on, we've wasted enough time here as it is. She had this amazing capacity to turn sadness into anger and anger into action, which meant nothing ever kept her down for long. And then Addison and I, and Sharon, who I suspect didn't quite know whom he was dealing with until now, were following her out the door and down the stairs. The whole of Devil's Acre, the peculiar heart of it anyway, was only 10 or 20 blocks square. After coming down from the workhouse, we pried loose a board from a fence and squeezed into a suffocating passageway. It led to another that was slightly less suffocating, and that led to one a bit wider still, and that to one wide enough that Emma and I could walk side by side. On they widened, like arteries relaxing after a heart attack, until we came to something that might properly have been called a street, with red bricks running down the middle and sidewalks paving the edges. "Fall back," Emma muttered. We shrank behind a corner and peeked out like command heads stacked. "What do you think you're doing?" Sharon said. He was still in the street and seemed more worried about being embarrassed by us than being killed. "Looking for ambush points and escape routes," Emma said. "No one's ambushing anyone," Sharon replied. "The pirates only operate in no man's land. They won't come after us here. This is Louche Lane." There was, in fact, a street sign to that effect, the first I'd seen in all of Devil's Acre. "Louche Lane," it read in fancy handwritten script. "Piracy discouraged." "Discouraged?" I said. "Then what's murder? Frowned upon?" "I believe murder is tolerated, with reservations." "Is anything illegal here?" Addison asked. "Library late fines are stiff. 10 lashes a day, and that's just for paperbacks." "There's a library?" "2. The one won't lend because all the books are bound in human skin and quite valuable." We shuffled out from behind the wall and cast a somewhat baffled look around. In no man's land I'd anticipated death at every turn. But Louche Lane, from all appearances, was a haven of civic order. The street was lined with neat little shops, and the shops had signs and display windows and apartments on the upper floors. There was not a caved roof or a broken pane of glass in sight. There were people on the street, too, and they lingered, ambling along in singles and pairs, pausing now and then to duck into a shop or look in a window. Their clothes weren't rags. Their faces were clean. Maybe everything here wasn't new and sparkling, but the weathered surfaces and patched paint gave it all a handmade, worn around the edges look that was quaint, even charming. My mother, if she'd seen Louche Lane in one of those thumbed through but never read travel magazines that papered our coffee table at home, would have crooned about its cuteness and complained that she and my dad had never taken a real European vacation. "Oh, Frank, let's go." Emma seemed palpably disappointed. "I was expecting something more sinister." "Me too," I said. "Where are all the murder dens and blood sport arenas?" "I don't know what sort of business you think people get up to around here," Sharon said, "but I've never heard of a murder den. As for blood sport arenas, there's only the one. Derek's down Oozing Street. Good chap, Derek. Owes me a favor."
And the whites? Said Emma. What about our kidnapped friends?
Keep your voice down, Sharon hissed. As soon as I take care of my own business, we'll find someone who can help you. Until then, don't repeat that to anyone.
Emma got in Sharon's face. Then don't make me repeat this. While we appreciate your help and expertise, our friends' lives have been given an expiration date. I won't stall and dawdle about simply to avoid ruffling some feathers.
Sharon looked down at her, quiet for a moment. Then he said, We all have an expiration date. If I were you, I wouldn't be in such a hurry to find out when it is.
Here's a picture.
We set off to find Sharon's lawyer. He quickly became frustrated. I could have sworn his office was along this street, he said, turning on his heel. Oh, it's been years since I've been to see him. Perhaps he's moved. Sharon decided to go looking on his own and told us to stay put. I'll be back in a few minutes. Don't speak to anyone. He strode away, leaving us alone. We clustered awkwardly on the sidewalk, unsure what to do with ourselves. People stared as they passed by.
He really had us going, didn't he? Said Emma. He made this place sound like a hotbed of criminality, but it looks like any other loot to me. In fact, the people here look more normal than any peculiars I've ever seen. It's as if they've had every distinguishing characteristic vacuumed out of them. It's downright boring.
You must be joking, said Addison. I've never seen any place so vile or disgusting. We both looked at him in surprise.
How's that? Said Emma. All that's here are little shops.
Yes, but look what they're selling. We hadn't until now. Just behind us was a display window, and in it stood a well-dressed man with mournful eyes and a cascading beard. When he saw that he had our attention, he nodded slightly, held up a pocket watch, and touched a button on its side. The moment he pressed it, he froze, and his image seemed to blur. A few seconds later, he moved without moving, disappeared, and then reappearing instantaneously in the opposite corner of the window.
Wow, I said. That's quite a trick.
He did it a second time, teleporting back to the other corner. While I stood mesmerized, Emma and Addison moved on to the next shop's window. I joined them and found a similar display, only standing behind the glass here was a woman in a black dress, a long string of beads dangling from one hand. When she saw that we were looking, she closed her eyes and stretched her arms like a sleepwalker. She began to pass the beads slowly through her fingers, turning each one. My eyes were so locked on the beads that it took me a few seconds to realize something was happening to her face. It was changing, subtly, with each bead she turned. At the turn of one bead, I watched the pallor of her skin lighten. At the next, her lips thinned. Then her hair reddened ever so slightly. The cumulative effect over the course of several dozen beads was that her face became
entirely different, morphing from that of a dark, round, featured grandmother to a young, sharp-nosed redhead. It was both enthralling and unsettling. When the show was over, I turned to Addison. "I don't understand," I said. "What are they selling?" Before he could answer, a preteen boy came hustling up to us and forced a pair of cards into my hand. "2 for 1 today only," he crowed. "No reasonable offer refused." I turned the cards over in my hand. One had the stopwatch man's photo on it, and on the back it read J. Edwin Bragg, bilocationalist. The other was a photo of the bead lady in a trance, and it read G. Funke, a woman of 1,000 faces. "Shoo, we're not buying," Emma said, and the boy scowled at her and scurried off. "Now do you see what they're selling?" said Addison. I cast my eyes down the street. There were people like the stopwatch man and bead lady in almost every shop window along Louche Lane. Peculiars, ready to put on a show if you so much as glanced in their direction. I hazarded a guess. "They're selling themselves?" "Like a dim bulb flickering to life," said Addison. "And that's bad," I said, guessing again. "Yes," Addison said sharply. "It's outlawed throughout peculiardom and for good reason." "One's peculiarity is a sacred gift," Emma said. "To sell it cheapens what is most special about us." It sounded like she was parroting a platitude that had been drilled into her from an early age. "Huh," I said. "Okay." "You aren't convinced," said Addison. "I guess I don't see what the harm would be. If I need the services of an invisible person, and that invisible person needs money, why shouldn't we trade?" "But you have strong morals, and that sets you apart from 99% of humanity," said Emma. "What if a bad person, or even a below-averagely morale person, wanted to buy the services of an invisible peculiar?" "The invisible peculiar should say no." "But it isn't always so black and white," Emma said. "And selling yourself erodes your moral compass. Pretty soon, you're dipping into the wrong side of that gray area without knowing it, doing things you'd never do if you weren't being paid to do them. And if someone were desperate enough, they might sell themselves to anyone, no matter what the other's intentions." "To a white, for instance," Addison added pointedly. Okay, yeah, that would be bad," I said. "But do you really think a peculiar would do that?" "Don't be daft," said Addison. "Just look at the state of this place. Probably the only loop in Europe that hasn't been laid waste to by the whites. And why do you think that is? Because it's been extremely useful, I'm sure.
to have an entire population of perfectly willing turncoats and informants waiting to do your bidding. Maybe you should keep your voices down, I said.
It makes sense, Emma said. They must have infiltrated our loops with peculiar informants. How else could they have known so much? Loop entrances, defenses, weak spots, only with help from people like this.
She cast a venomous look around, her expression that of someone who just drunk curdled milk. No reasonable offer refused, indeed, Addison snarled. Traitors, every one of them, ought to be hanged.
What's the matter, hon? Having a bad day?
We turned to find a woman standing behind us. How long had she been there? What had she heard? She was dressed in sharp and businesslike 1950s style, knee-length skirt and short black pumps, and puffed lazily at a cigarette. Her hair was teased up in a beehive, and her accent was as flat and American as the Midwestern plains.
I'm Lorraine, she said, and you're new in town.
Well,
we're waiting for someone, said Emma. We're on holiday. Say no more, said Lorraine. I'm on vacation myself. Have been for the last 50 years.
She laughed, showing lipstick-stained teeth.
You just let me know if I can help you with anything. Lorraine's got the best selection on Lush Lane, and that's an actual fact.
No thanks, I said.
Don't worry, hun. They won't bite.
We're not interested, Lorraine shrugged.
I was just being friendly. You looked a little lost, is all.
She started to leave, but something she'd said had piqued Emma's interest.
Selection of what?
Lorraine turned back and flashed a greasy smile.
Old ones, young ones, all sorts of talents. Some of my customers just want a show, and that's fine. But others have specific needs. We make sure everyone leaves satisfied.
The boy said no thank you, Addison said gruffly, and he seemed about to tell the woman off when Emma stepped in front of him and said,
I'd like to see.
You what? I said.
I want to see,
Emma said, an edge creeping into her voice.
Show me. Serious inquiries only, said Lorraine. Oh, I'm very serious.
I didn't know what Emma was up to, but I trusted her enough to go with it.
What about them?
Lorraine said, casting an uncertain gaze at Addison and me.
They always so rude? Yes, but they're all right.
Lorraine squinted at us as if imagining what it might take to forcibly eject us from her place, should the need arise.
What can you do? She said to me. Anything?
Emma cleared her throat, then bugged her eyes at me. I knew right away what she was telegraphing. Lie. I used to be able to levitate pencils and things, I said, but now I can't even get one to stand on end. I think I'm out of order or something.
Happens to the best of them.
She looked at Addison.
And you?
Addison rolled his eyes. I'm a talking dog.
And that's all you do? Talk?
Sometimes it seems that way, I couldn't resist saying. I don't know who to feel more insulted by, said Addison. Lorraine took a final puff of her cigarette and flicked it away.
"All right, sugars, follow me."
She started to walk away. We hung behind a moment and conferred in a whisper.
"What about Sharon?" I said. "He told us to wait here." "This will only take a minute," Emma said. "And I have a hunch she knows a lot more about where the whites are hiding than Sharon does."
"And you think she's just going to volunteer such information?" said Addison.
"We'll see," Emma said,
and she turned to follow Lorraine. Lorraine's place had no window and no sign, just a blank door with a silver bell and a pull chain. Lorraine rang the bell. We waited while a series of deadbolts were slid from the inside, and then the door opened a crack. An eye glinted at us from the shadows.
"Fresh meat,"
said a man's voice.
"Customers," Lorraine replied. "Let us in."
The eye disappeared and the door opened the rest of the way. We came into a formal entrance hall where the doorman waited to look us over. He wore a massive overcoat with a high collar and a wide-brimmed fedora. The hat tilted so low that all we could see of his face were two pinprick eyes and the tip of his nose. He stood blocking our way, staring us down. Can you all hear me? No? Somehow. No one? Can you all hear me? Okay. 2, but my voice was jumping around earlier. Is that where we're at? Try rebooting TikTok, like closing it and coming back in. That's worked for some people before when it starts doing that. It does say my connection's unstable, but it said that this entire time. So I'm not sure what I can do about that. Should I keep going or no? Two. All right.
"Well," said Lorraine.
The man seemed to decide we weren't a threat.
"Okay,"
he said, stepping aside. He closed and locked the door behind us, then trailed after as Lorraine showed us down a long hallway. We came into a dim parlor flickering with oil lamps. It was a sleazy place with delusions of grandeur. The walls were trimmed with gold scrollwork and velvet drapes. The domed ceiling was painted with tanned and tunicked Greek gods. The marble columns framed the entrance to the hall. Lorraine nodded to the doorman.
"Thank you, Carlos."
Carlos glided away to the back of the room. Lorraine walked to a curtained wall and pulled a cord, and the fabric slid aside to reveal a wide panel of sturdy glass. We stepped forward to look, and through it saw another room. It was very much like the one we were standing in, but smaller, and people were lazing about on chairs and sofas, some reading while others napped. I counted 8 of them. A few were older, graying at the temples. 2, a boy and a girl, were under the age of 10. They were all, I realized, prisoners. Addison started to ask a question, but Lorraine gestured impatiently.
Questions after, please.
She strode to the glass, picked up a tube connected umbilically to the wall below it, and spoke into one end.
Number 13.
On the other side of the glass, the youngest boy stood and shuffled forward. His hands and legs were chained, and he was the only peculiar wearing anything resembling prisoner's garb, a striped suit and cap with the number 13 stitched boldly onto them. Though he couldn't have been older than 10, he had a man's facial hair, a bushy triangular goatee, and eyebrows like jungle caterpillars, the eyes below them cold and appraising. "Why is he chained like that?" I said. "Is he dangerous?"
"You'll see,"
Lorraine said. The boy closed his eyes. He seemed to be concentrating. A moment later, hair began to emerge from the brim of his cap, creeping down his forehead. His goatee grew too, twisting into a clump, then rising and swaying like a charmed snake. "Heavenly herons," said Addison. "How marvelously strange."
"Watch closely now,"
said Lorraine, grinning. Number 13 raised his shackled hands. The pointed end of his charmed goatee aimed itself at the lock, sniffed around the keyhole, and wriggled inside. The boy opened his eyes and stared ahead, expressionless. After 10 or so seconds, the twisted goatee stiffened and began to vibrate, making a high musical note we could hear through the glass. The padlock opened, and the chains fell away from his wrists. He bowed slightly. I stifled an urge to applaud.
"He can open any lock in the world,"
Lorraine said with a hint of pride. The boy returned to his chair and magazine. Lorraine covered the tube with her hand.
"He's one of a kind, and so are the rest. One's a thought reader, very adept. Another can reach through walls up to her shoulder. That's more useful than it sounds, believe me. A little girl here flies if she's had enough grape soda."
"Is that right?" Addison said thickly.
"She'd be happy to demonstrate," said Lorraine, and speaking into the tube, she summoned the girl to the window. "It's not necessary," Emma said through clenched teeth. "It's their job," said Lorraine. 5, come forward."
The little girl went to a table stocked with bottles, selected one filled with purple liquid, and took a long drink. When she drained it, she set down the bottle, let out a dainty hiccup, and went to stand by a cane-backed chair. A moment later, she hiccuped again, and her feet began to lift off the ground, pivoting upward while her head remained level. By the third hiccup, her feet had risen 90 degrees, and she lay flat on her back in the air, her only support the top of the chair beneath her neck. I think Lorraine expected more of a reaction from us, but though impressed, we were a study in silence.
"Tough crowd,"
she said, and dismissed the girl. And here are pictures. Here's the boy with the long hair that can unlock chains. And here's the little floating girl. Now, Lorraine said, hanging up the tube and turning to face us.
If none of that was your cup of tea out of lending agreements with other stables, by no means are your choices limited to what you see here.
Stables, Emma said. Her voice was flat, but I could tell she was boiling just below the surface.
So you admit you treat them like animals?
Lorraine studied Emma for a moment. Her eyes flitted to the man in the overcoat standing guard in the back.
Course not, she said. These are high-performance assets. They're well-fed, well-rested, trained to perform under pressure, and pure as the driven snow. Most have never touched so much as a drop of ambro, and I've got the papers to prove it in my office. Or you could just ask them. Number 13 and 6, she shouted into the speaking tube. Come tell these people how you like it here.
The little boy and girl got up and shuffled to the window. The boy picked up the speaking tube. We like it here very much, he said robotically. Ma'am treats us real nice. He handed the tube to the girl.
We like to do our work.
She paused, trying to recall something learned and forgotten.
We like our work,
she mumbled. Lorraine dismissed them irritably.
And there you have it. Now I can let you test drive one or two more, but beyond that, I'll need some kind of a down payment.
I'd like to see those papers, Emma said, glancing back at the overcoat man. The ones in your office. Her hands, clenched at her sides, were starting to go red. I could see we needed to leave before things turned ugly. Whatever information this woman might have had wasn't worth the fight, and rescuing all these kids? Well, as callous as it sounded, we had our own kids to rescue first. Actually, that won't be necessary, I said, then leaned into Emma and whispered, We'll come back to help them. We have to prioritize.
The papers, she said, ignoring me. No problem, Lorraine replied. Step into my office and let's talk turkey.
And then Emma was going, and there was no unsuspicious way to stop her. Lorraine's office was a desk and a chair crammed into a walk-in closet. She had only just closed the door behind us when Emma sprang at her, pushing her hard against it. Lorraine swore and shouted for Carlos, but went quiet when Emma held a hand to her face that glowed hot as an oven coil. On Lorraine's blouse, 2 blackened handprints smoked where Emma had pushed her. There was a thump on the door and a grunt from the other side.
Tell him you're fine,
Emma said, her voice low and flinty.
I'm fine,
Lorraine said stiffly. The door rattled against her back.
Tell him again.
Lorraine, more convincing now.
Get lost, I'm doing business.
Another grunt, then receding footsteps.
You're being very stupid, Lorraine said. No one's ever stolen from me and lived. We don't want money, Emma said. You're going to answer some questions. About what? Those people out there, you think you own them?
Lorraine's brow furrowed.
What's this about? Those people, those children, you bought them. Do you think you own them? I never bought anyone. You bought them and now you're selling them. You're a slaver. That isn't how it works. They came to me willingly. I'm their agent. You're their pimp, Emma spat. Without me, they'd have starved or been taken. Taken by who? You know who. I want to hear you say it.
The woman laughed.
That's not a good idea.
Yeah, I said, taking a step forward.
Why not? They have ears everywhere, and they don't like being talked about. I've killed whites, I said. I'm not scared of them. Then you're an idiot.
Shall I bite her? Said Addison. I'd really like to, just a little. What happens when they take people? I said, ignoring him.
No one knows, she said. I've tried to find out, but I bet you've tried very hard, Emma said. They come in here sometimes, Lorraine said. To shop.
Shop, Addison said. That's a nice word for it.
To use my people.
She looked around. Her voice dropped to a whisper.
I hate it. You never know how many they're gonna want, or for how long, but you give them what they ask for. I'd complain, but you don't complain. Bet you don't complain about what they pay, Emma said contemptuously. It's not hardly enough for what they put them through. I try to hide the little ones when I hear they're coming. They bring them back roughed up, memories blanked out, and I say, where'd you go? What'd they make you do? But the kids don't remember zip.
She shook her head.
They get these nightmares, though. Nasty ones. It's hard to sell them after that. I gotta sell you, Emma said, livid, trembling. Not that anyone would pay half a farthing.
I stuffed my fist into my pockets to stop them from flying at Lorraine. There was more to be gotten from her. What about the peculiars they kidnapped from other loops? I asked.
They bring them through in trucks. Used to be a rare thing. Lately, it's been all the time.
Did one come through earlier today? I said.
A couple of hours ago, she said. They had guards with guns all over the place, blocking the street. Made a big production of it.
They don't usually?
Not usually. Guess they feel safe here. This delivery must have been important.
It was them, I thought. A thrill of excitement shot through me, but was immediately stifled by Addison lunging at Lorraine. I'm sure they feel quite safe here, he snarled, among such perfect traitors. I snatched his collar and held him back. Calm down. Addison struggled against me, and I thought for a moment he might snap at my hand. But then he relaxed.
We do what we have to survive, Lorraine hissed. So do we, said Emma. Now tell us where those trucks go, and if you lie, or it turns out to be a trap, I'll come back and I'll melt your nostrils shut.
She held one burning finger just beyond the tip of Lorraine's nose.
Agreed?
I could almost imagine Emma doing it. She was tapping into a deep well of hatred I'd never seen fully revealed before, and as useful as it was in situations like this, it was a little scary too. I didn't like to think what she might be capable of given the proper motivation.
They go to their part of the acre,
Lorraine said, turning her head away from Emma's hot finger.
Over the bridge.
What bridge? Said Emma, holding it closer.
At the top end of Smoking Street, don't bother trying to cross, though, unless you want your head to end up on a pike.
I reckon that was all we were going to get out of Lorraine. Now we had to figure out what to do with her. Addison wanted to bite her. Emma wanted to trace an S on her forehead with her white-hot finger, branding her for life as a slaver. I talked them out of doing either, and instead we gagged her with a sash cord from the curtains and tied her to the leg of the desk. We were about to leave her like that when I thought of one last thing I wanted to know. The peculiars they kidnap. What happens to them? I pulled down her gag.
None have escaped to tell, she said. But there are rumors about something worse than death. She gave us a smile dripping with slime. I guess you'll just have to find out, won't you? I'm gonna take a little bit of a break. We're almost halfway through here. I don't know how much more we can get through, but I just want to vape for a second. Okay. We're about 2 pages away from halfway through this chapter. It was like 30 pages. But I hate staggering chapters. But I just know we don't have the kind of time to get through all of it. Nor does my voice. Okay. Especially for the last half of this chapter. There's a lot of, like, voices in the last half of this. Where is, hold on. How long is chapter 4? I'm gonna see how long chapter 4 is. Because I knew, but then I didn't know anymore. Oh my god. Oh my god. It's so long. Why is it so long? Okay, hold on. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. Is this all chapter 4? Oh my god. All the chapters are so long in this one. Okay. Jeez. It's like... That one's also like 60 pages, at least. You gotta be kidding me. It's about the same amount, like the same length. It's so... Yeah, just 60-page long chapters. All of them are like so long. Oh my god, we have so much content to get through. So much stuff to do. I gotta drink a little bit. Oh, thank you. Also, tell Toby I say hi. I didn't say hi to Toby. Tell Toby I say hi. Tell all your pets I say hi. Tell all the pets that I say hi. Cuddles, BMO, Sue, all the pets. I want all the pets to know that I love them. Well, tell him when he wakes up. I don't give a shit. Just make sure he figures it out. Oh man, it's gonna be wild. They really should not let him make his chapters this long. Oh. So upsetting. So upsetting. Don't worry about it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Okay. Okay. A small break. Small break over. Small break. Small break fine. Oh my god, me too. Me too. Think of the audiobook recorders. Think of the audiobook recorders. I don't even know what that is. Is that a llama? Thank you. Thank you for the llama. That's adorable. And he doesn't put a table of contents, so you gotta fish through. That's the worst. I hate it when people don't include a table of contents. Let me know how much longer I have before the end of the chapter so that I don't stay up all night. Like, I don't know how long it is unless you tell me. And a lot of the time, I'll debate on whether or not I'm going to read the next chapter at the end of the night if there's a table of contents to tell me when the next chapter is. If I'm like, oh, okay, that's like 20 pages, I can knock that out. But if it's like a 100-page long fucking chapter, guess what I'm not gonna do? Because I'm not gonna be able to function the next day. But if I had stopped for like 10 minutes, that's gonna be like, okay, it's gonna be like, I stopped at pretty much exactly 9:15, so it's another 5 minutes, and then it'll be 9:25, and then we pretty much only have like a half hour left, and a half hour isn't gonna get us as far as you think it will, and then we're gonna have uneven chapter length next time, and it's gonna be a real bummer. It's gonna be a real bummer, guys. I hate stopping in the middle of the chapter, but sometimes he leaves me no choice. He doesn't leave me a choice. It's upsetting. It's upsetting is what it is. Thank you for all the cat paws. I appreciate it. I'm just so... Why? Also, we're gonna really tell how well my voice holds up by the end of this chapter if we make it there. Because there's a lot of voices at the end of it. Alright. I'm gonna jump back in here, if that's okay with you guys. Oh my god, no, because then he'll know so he'll know I did it. I don't want any authors to know I exist. They come and they're like, who made this trash? And it's me, I'm the trash. I made this trash. That's what I did. Yeah. And I don't want to find out that all of the authors that I really like think that the stuff that I make is terrible. I prefer them to not know about it. I don't want anybody to know. Thank you for all the things. There's so many things. I'm just like, I know I can do it better, and like I know how to do it better, and if I had more resources to sink in and making it better, I would feel so much happier and content with it. And but I'm also like, no matter what, you're always gonna find reasons to not create stuff. And regardless of the fact that I can't do it 100% the way that I'd love to do it, isn't going to stop me from doing it, if that makes sense. I'm still going to make trash. It's going to be trash, but I'm still going to make it. Nothing's going to hold me back. If it's trash, we're raccoons anyway. We're here for it. Alright. I'm going to get back on it. I'm going to get back in here. The moment we opened the office door, the man in the overcoat charged at us from across the parlor, something heavy raised in his hand. Before he could reach us, a muffled shout of alarm sounded from the office, and he stopped, changing course to see about Lorraine. When he'd crossed the office threshold, Emma slammed the door behind him and melted the handle into useless slag. That bought us a minute or two. Addison and I bolted for the exit. Halfway there, I realized Emma hadn't followed. She was banging on the window of the enslaved peculiar's quarters. "We can help you escape. Show me where the door is." They turned sluggishly to stare, splayed on their chaises and daybeds. Throw something to break the glass, Emma said. Be quick.
None moved. They seemed confused. Perhaps they didn't believe rescue was really possible. Or perhaps they didn't want to be rescued.
Emma, we can't wait,
I said, tugging at her arm. She wouldn't give up.
Please, she cried into the tube. At least send out the children.
Full-throated shouts from inside the office. The door shook on its hinges. Frustrated, Emma slammed the glass with her fist.
What's the matter with them?
Rattled stairs. The little boy and girl began to cry. Addison tugged the hem of Emma's dress with his teeth. We must go. Emma let the speaking tube fall and turned away bitterly. We hit the door running and burst out onto the sidewalk. A thick yellow murk had blown in, bundling everything in gauze and hiding one side of the street from the other. By the time we'd sprinted to the end of the block, we could hear Lorraine bellowing behind us, but couldn't see her. We turned one corner and then another until it seemed we'd lost her. On a deserted street by a boarded-up storefront, we stopped to catch our breaths. It's called Stockholm Syndrome, I said, when people start to sympathize with their captors. I think they were just scared, said Addison. Where would they have run to? This whole place is a prison.
You're both wrong, Emma said. They were drugged.
You sound pretty sure, I said. She pushed back hair that had fallen over her eyes.
When I was working in the circus, after I'd run away from home, a woman approached me after one of my fire-eating shows. She said she knew what I was, knew others like me, and that I could make a lot more money if I went and worked for her.
Emma gazed out at the street, her cheeks flushed from the sprint.
I told her I didn't want to go. She kept insisting. When she finally left, she was angry. That night, I woke up in the back of a wagon with my mouth gagged and my hands cuffed. I couldn't move, couldn't think straight. It was Miss Peregrine who rescued me. If she hadn't found me when they stopped to reshoe their horse that day.
Emma nodded behind us to where we'd come from.
I might have ended up like them.
You never told me that, I said quietly.
It's not something I like to talk about.
I'm very sorry that happened to you, said Addison. Was that woman back there? Was she the one who kidnapped you? Emma thought for a moment.
It happened such a long time ago. I've blocked out the worst of it, including my abductor's face. But I know this. If you'd left me alone with that woman, I'm not sure I could have stopped myself from taking her life.
We've all got demons to slay, I said. I leaned against a boarded window, a sudden wave of exhaustion breaking over me. How long had we been awake? How many hours since Calls had revealed himself? It seemed like days ago, though it couldn't have been more than 10 or 12 hours. Every moment since had been a war, a nightmare of struggle and terror without end. I could feel my body inching towards collapse. Panic was the only thing keeping me upright, and whenever it began to fade, I did too. For the merest fraction of a second, I allowed my eyes to close. Even in that slim black parenthesis, horrors awaited me. A specter of eternal death crouched and feeding upon the body of my grandfather, its eyes weeping oil. Those same eyes planted with the twin stalks of garden shears, howling as it sank into a boggy grave, its master's face contorted in pain, tumbling backward into a void, gutshot, screaming.
I had slain my demons already, but the victories were fleeting. Others had risen up quickly to replace them. My eyes flew open at the sound of footsteps behind me on the other side of the boarded-up window. I hopped away and turned. Though the store looked abandoned, someone was inside, and they were coming out. There was panic. I was awake again, and the others had heard the noise too. Acting on collective instinct, we ducked behind a stack of firewood nearby. Through the logs, I peeked at the storefront, reading the faded sign that hung above the door. Monday, Dyson and Stripe, attorneys at law, hated and feared since 1666. A bolt slid and slowly the door opened. A familiar black hood appeared. Sharon. He looked around, judged the coast clear, then slipped out and locked the door behind him. As he hurried away in the direction of Luge Lane, we consulted in whispers about whether to go after him. Did we need him anymore? Could he be trusted? Maybe and maybe. What had he been doing in that shuttered storefront? Was this the lawyer he'd talked about seeing? Why the sneaking? Too many questions, too many uncertainties about him. We decided we could make it on our own. We stayed put and watched as he turned ghostly in the murk and was gone. We set out to find Smoking Street and the White's Bridge. Not wanting to risk another unpredictable encounter, we resolved to search without asking for directions. That became easier once we discovered the Acres street signs, which were concealed in the most inconvenient places, behind public benches at knee height, dangling from the tops of lampposts, inscribed into worn cobblestones underfoot. But even with their help, we took as many wrong turns as right. It seemed the acre had been designed to drive those trapped inside it mad. There were streets that ended at blank walls, only to begin again elsewhere. Streets that curved so sharply they spiraled back on themselves. Streets with no name, or two, or three. None were as tidy or tended to as Luge Lane, where it was clear a special effort had been made to create a pleasing environment for shoppers in the market for peculiar flesh. The idea of which, now that I'd seen Lorraine's wares and heard Emma's story, turned my stomach. As we wandered, I began to get a handle on the acre's unique geography, learning the blocks less by their names than by their character. Each street was distinct, the shops along them grouped according to type. Doleful Street boasted 2 undertakers, a medium, a carpenter who worked exclusively with repurposed coffin wood, a troupe of professional funeral wailers who did weekend duty as a barbershop quartet, and a tax accountant. Oozing Street was oddly cheerful, with flower boxes hanging from windowsills and houses painted bright colors. Even the slaughterhouse that anchored it was an inviting robin's egg blue. And I resisted an odd impulse to go inside and ask for a tour. Periwinkle Street, on the other hand, was a cesspit. There was an open sewer running down its center, a thriving population of aggressive flies, and sidewalks that overflowed with putrefying vegetables, the property of a cut-rate greengrocer whose sign claimed he could turn them fresh again with a kiss. Attenuated Avenue was just 50 feet long and had only one business: 2 men selling snacks from a basket on a sled. Children crowded around, clamoring for handouts, and Addison veered off to snuffle around their feet for droppings. I was about to call after him when one of the men shouted, "Cat's meat, boiled cat's meat here." He came scurrying back on his own, tail tucked between his legs, whimpering, "I shall never eat again. Never, ever again." And here's a picture. We approached Smoking Street from Upper Smudge. The closer we got, the more the block seemed to wither, its storefronts abandoned, its sidewalks emptying, the pavement blackening with currents of ash that blew around our feet, as if the street itself had been infected by some creeping death. At the end it curved sharply to the right, and just before the bend was an old wooden house with an equally old man guarding its stoop. He swept at the ash with a stubbly broom, but it piled up faster than he could ever hope to collect it. I asked him why he bothered. He looked up suddenly, hugging the broom to his chest as if afraid I'd steal it. His feet were bare and black, and his pants were sooty to the knee. "Someone's got to," he said. "Can't let the place go to hell." As we passed, he returned grimly to his task, though his arthritic hands could hardly close around the stick. There was something almost regal about him, I thought, a defiance I admired. He was a holdout who refused to give up his post, the last watchman at the end of the world. Turning with the road, we moved through a zone of buildings that shed their skins as we walked. First the paint was singed away, and farther along the windows had blackened and burst. Next, the roofs were caving and the walls coming down, and finally, as we came to the junction with Smoking Street, only their bones were left. A chaos of timbers, charred and leaning, embers glowing in the ash like tiny hearts beating their last. We stood and looked around, thunderstruck. Sulphurous smoke rose from deep cracks that fissured the pavement. Fire-stripped trees loomed like scarecrows over the ruins. Drifts of ash flowed down the street, a foot deep in places. It was as close to hell as I ever intend to find myself. "So this is the White's front driveway," said Addison. "How fitting." "It's unreal," I said, unbuttoning my coat. Sauna-like warmth rose all around, radiating through the soles of my shoes. "What did Sharon say happened here?" "Underground fire," Emma said. "They can burn for years, notoriously difficult to extinguish." There was a sound like a giant can of soda being opened, and a tall prong of orange flame shot up from a seam in the pavement not 10 feet away. We started and jumped, and then had to collect ourselves. "Let's not spend 1 minute longer here than we need to," said Emma. "Which way?" There was only left and right to choose from. We knew that Smoking Street terminated at the ditch on one end, and at the White's Bridge on the other. But we didn't know which way was which, and between the smoke, the fog, and the wind-blown ash, we couldn't see far in either direction. Choosing at random could mean a dangerous detour and a waste of time. We were getting desperate when we heard a warbling tune drifting towards us through the fog. We scuttled off the road to hide among the carbonized ribs of a house. As the singers approached,
their voices growing louder, we could make out the words to their strange song. The night before the thief was stretched, the hangman came around. I've come, he said, before you're dead, a warning to expound. I'll strangle your neck and send you to heck, and cut off your arm and do you some harm, and flay your hide and give you a ride. Here they all paused for breath, then finished with, 6 feet under the ground. Long before they emerged from the fog, I knew whose voices they were. The figures took form in black overalls and sturdy black boots, tool bags swinging gaily at their sides. Even after a hard day's work, the indomitable gallows riggers were still singing at the top of their lungs.
Bless their tuneless souls,
Emma said, laughing softly. Earlier we'd seen them working at the ditch end of Smoking Street, so it seemed reasonable to assume that's where they were coming from, which meant they were walking in the direction of the bridge. We waited for the men to pass and disappear again into the fog before venturing back onto the road to follow. We shuffled through reefs of ash that blackened everything. The cuffs of my pants, Emma's shoes and bare ankles, the full height of Addison's legs. Somewhere in the distance, the riggers took up another song, their voices echoing weirdly through the burned landscape. Nothing around us but ruin. Now and then we heard a sharp whoosh, quickly followed by a spout of flame bursting from the ground. None erupted as close as the first one. We were lucky. Getting roasted alive here would have been easy. Out of nowhere, a wind kicked up, sending ash and hot cinders skyward in a black blizzard. We turned and covered our faces in an effort to breathe. I pulled my shirt collar over my mouth, but it didn't help much, and I started to cough. Emma took Addison into her arms, but then she started to choke. I tore off my coat and threw it over their heads. Emma's coughing quieted, and I heard Addison's muffled voice say, "Thank you," beneath the fabric. It was all we could do to huddle there and wait for the ash storm to end. I had my eyes closed when I heard something move nearby, and peeking through slit fingers, I saw something that even here, amidst all I'd witnessed in Devil's Acre, startled me. A man, strolling, casual as could be, a handkerchief pressed to his mouth, but otherwise unperturbed. He had no trouble navigating the dark, because beams of strong white light were shooting from each of his eye sockets. "Evening," he called out, swinging his sight beams toward me and tipping his hat. I tried to reply, but my mouth filled with ash, and then so did my eyes, and when I opened them, he was gone. As the wind began to die, we coughed and spat and rubbed our eyes until we could function again. Emma set Addison on the ground. "If we're not careful, this loop will kill us before the whites do," he said. Emma handed me back my coat and hugged me hard until the air cleared. She had a way of wrapping her arms around me and nudging her head into the hollow of my chest so that no gaps were left between us, and I wanted badly to kiss her, even here, covered in soot from head to toe. Addison cleared his throat. "I hate to interrupt, but we really should be getting on." We unhooked our limbs, slightly embarrassed, and continued walking. Soon pale figures appeared in the fog ahead. They were milling in the street, crossing between shacks that encrusted the roadside. We hesitated, nervous about who they might be, but there was no other way forward.
"Chin up, back straight," Emma said. "Try to look scary."
We closed ranks and walked into their midst. They were shifty-eyed and wild-looking, soot-stained all over, dressed in scavenged cast-offs. I scowled, doing my best impression of a dangerous person. They shied away like beaten dogs. Here was a kind of shanty town, low-slung huts made from fireproof scrap metal, tin roofs weighed down with boulders and tree stumps, canvas flaps for doors if they had doors at all, a fungal smear of life overgrowing the bones of a burned civilization, hardly there at all. Chickens ran in the street. A man knelt by a smoking hole in the road, cooking eggs in its blistering heat. "Don't get too close," Addison muttered. "They look ill." I thought so too. It was the limping way they carried themselves, their glassy stares. Several wore crude masks or sacks over their heads with only slits for eyes, as if to hide faces chewed by disease, or to show a disease's transmission.
Who are they? I asked. No idea, said Emma, and I'm not about to ask.
My guess is they're welcome nowhere else, Addison said. Untouchables, plague carriers, criminals whose offenses are considered unforgivable, even on Devil's Acre. Those who escaped the noose settled here at the very bottom, the absolute edge of peculiar society, exiled from the outcasts of outcasts.
If this is the edge, said Emma, then the whites can't be far away. Are we sure these people are peculiar? I asked.
There seemed to be nothing unique about them, aside from their wretchedness. Maybe it was pride, but I didn't believe a community of peculiars, however degraded, would allow themselves to live in such medieval squalor.
Don't know, don't care, Emma replied. Just walk.
We kept our heads down and our eyes forward, feigning disinterest in hopes that these people would return the favor. Most stayed away, but a few trailed us, begging. Anything, a dropper, a vial, said one, gesturing to his eyes.
Please, implored another. We haven't had a kick in days.
Their cheeks were pocked and scarred, like they'd been crying tears of acid. I could hardly look at them.
Whatever you want, we haven't got it, said Emma, shooing them away.
The beggars dropped back and stood in the road, watching us darkly. Another called out in a high, fraying voice. You there, boy.
Ignore him, Emma muttered.
I side-eyed him without turning my head. He was squatting against a wall, in rags, pointing at me with a trembling hand. You him? Boy, you're him, ain't you? He wore an eye patch over glasses and flipped it up to study me. Yeah. He whistled low, then flashed a black gum smile. They've been waiting for you.
Who has?
I couldn't take it any more. I stopped in front of him. Emma sighed impatiently. The beggar's smile grew wider, crazier. The dust mothers and knot blowers. The damn librarians and blessed cartographers. Anyone who's everyone. He raised his arms and bowed in mocking worship, and I got a whiff of ripe funk. Waiting a long time.
For what? Come on, said Emma. He's obviously a lunatic.
The big show. The Big Show, said the beggar, his voice rising and falling like a carnival barker's. The biggest and best and most and last. It's almost here. A weird chill rattled through me. I don't know you, and you sure as hell don't know me. I turned and walked away. Sure I do, he heard him say. You're the boy who talks to hollows. I froze. Emma and Addison turned to gape at me. I ran back, confronting him. Who are you? I shouted in his face. Who told you that? But he just laughed, and I could get nothing more out of him. Here's a picture. We slipped away just as a crowd began to gather. Don't look back, Addison warned. Forget him, said Emma. He's a madman. I think we all knew he was more than that, but that's all we knew. We walked fast in paranoid silence, our brains humming with unanswerable questions. No one mentioned the beggar's bizarre pronouncements, for which I was grateful. I had no clue what they meant, and was too exhausted to speculate, and I could tell from their dragging feet that Emma and Addison were flagging too. We didn't talk about that either. Exhaustion was our new enemy, and to name it would only have empowered it more. We strained to see any sign of the White's Bridge as the road ahead sloped downward into an obscuring bowl of fog. It occurred to me that Lorraine might have lied to us. Maybe there was no bridge. Maybe she'd sent us into this pit, hoping its denizens would eat us alive. If only we had brought her with us. Then we could have forced her to... There it is, Addison cried, his body forming an arrow that pointed straight ahead. We struggled to see what he saw, even with his glasses. Addison's vision was sharper than ours, and after a dozen paces we could make out, just dimly, how the road narrowed and then arched over some sort of chasm. The bridge! Emma cried. We broke into a run, exhaustion momentarily forgotten, our feet sending up puffs of black dust. A minute later, when we stopped for breath, the view had cleared. A shroud of greenish mist hung over the chasm. Looming faintly beyond was a long wall of white stone, and beyond that a high, pale tower, the top of which was lost among low clouds. That was it, the White's fortress. There was an unsettling blankness about it, like a face with its features wiped clean. There was a wrongness about its placement, too, its great white edifice and clean lines contrasting bizarrely with the burned-over waste of Smoking Street, like a suburban shopping center plopped in the midst of the Battle of Agincourt. Just looking at it charged me with dread and purpose, as if I could feel all the disparate strands of my silly and scattered life converging towards a single point, unseen behind those walls. That's where it was, the thing I was supposed to do or die trying, the debt I had to pay, the thing for which all the joys and terrors of my life thus far had been a prelude. If everything happens for a reason, my reason was on the other side. T-E. Okay. Beside me, Emma was laughing. I gave her a baffled look and she composed herself.
That's where they've been hiding? She said by way of explanation.
It would seem so, Addison said. Do you find that humorous?
Nearly all my life, I've hated and feared the whites. Across all those years, I can't tell you how many times I've imagined the moment we finally find their lair, their den. I'd expected at the very least a foreboding castle, walls dripping with blood, a lake of boiling oil, but no.
So you're disappointed? I said.
I am. A bit.
She pointed accusingly at the fortress.
Is that the best they can do?
I'm disappointed too, said Addison. I hoped at least we'd have an army alongside us. But from the looks of it, perhaps we won't need one. I doubt that, I said. Anything could be waiting for us on the other side of that wall.
Then we'll be ready for anything, Emma said. What could they throw at us that we haven't faced already? We have survived bullets, bombing, hollow attacks. The point is, we're finally here. And after all these years of them ambushing us, we're finally bringing some fight to them.
I'm sure they're quaking in their boots, I said.
I'm going to find Call, Emma went on. I'm going to find him and make him weep for his mother. I'm going to make him beg for his worthless life, and then I'm going to put both hands around his neck and squeeze it until his head melts off.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, I said. I'm sure there's a lot standing between us and him. There will be whites everywhere and armed guards, probably. Maybe even hollows, Addison said.
Definitely hollows,
said Emma. She sounded vaguely excited by the idea. Point being, I said, I don't think we should storm the gates without knowing more about what's waiting for us on the other side. We may only have one chance at this, and I don't want to throw it away.
Okay,
said Emma.
What do you suggest?
That we find a way to sneak Addison inside. He's the least likely to be noticed, small enough to hide almost anywhere, and he's got the best nose. He could do recon and sneak out again and tell us what he found. That is, if he's up for it. And if I don't return, said Addison. Then we'll come after you, I said. The dog took a moment to consider, but only a moment. I accept, on one condition. Name it, I said. In the tales that are told about us after our victory, I should like to be known as Addison the Intrepid.
And so you shall, said Emma.
Make that extremely intrepid, Addison said, and handsome. Done, I said. Excellent, said Addison. Time to have at it then. Nearly everyone we care about in the world is on the other side of that bridge. Every minute I spend on this side is a minute wasted. We would accompany Addison as far as the bridge, then wait nearby for his return. We began to jog downhill. The going easy, the shanty town around us growing denser as we advanced. The gaps between shacks closed until none remained, the whole of it blurring past in an unbroken patchwork of rust-eaten metal. Then abruptly the shacks and lean-tos came to an end, and for 100 yards Smoking Street returned to a wilderness of caved walls and blackened timbers. A buffer zone of sorts, perhaps enforced by the whites. At last we came to the bridge, the mouth of it bearded by a scrum of people, a few dozen in all. While we were still too far away to register the state of their clothes, Addison said, "Look, an encamped army laying siege to the fortress. I knew we wouldn't be the only ones to take up the fight." Upon closer inspection, however, these were anything but soldiers. With a disappointed humph, Addison's bright little hope winked out. "They're not laying siege," I said. "They're just laying." The wretchedest shantytowners we'd seen yet. They were slumped in the ashes, arranged in postures of such listless torpor that for a moment I mistook even the ones who were sitting upright for dead. Their hair and bodies were blacked with ash and grease, and their faces so afflicted with pits and scars that I wondered if they were lepers. As we picked our way between them, a few looked up weakly. But if they were waiting for something, it wasn't us, and their heads slumped down again. The only one standing was a boy in a flap-eared hunting cap who prowled between the sleepers, rifling their pockets. Those he woke swatted at him, but didn't bother giving chase. They had nothing worth stealing anyway. We were nearly past when one called out, "You'll die." Emma stopped and turned defiant.
"What was that?"
"You'll die." The man who spoke lounged on a sheet of cardboard, his yellowed eyes peeping through a burrow of black hair. "No one crosses the bridge without permission."
"We mean to cross it anyway, so if you know something we should be aware of, speak now."
The lounger stifled a laugh. The rest were silent. Emma looked them over.
"None of you will help us?"
One man started to say, "Be careful to—" But as soon as he'd begun, another man hushed him.
"Let them go, and in a few days we'll have their drippings."
A moan of agonized desire went up among the shantytowners.
"Oh, what I wouldn't give for a vial of that," said a woman by my feet.
"For just a drop, just a drop," sang a man, bouncing on his haunches.
"A drop of their drippings."
"Stop, it's torture," another whimpered.
"Don't even mention it." "To hell with all of you," Emma shouted. "Let's get you across, Addison the Intrepid."
And we turned away in disgust. That's where we're going to stop, because it's right in the middle of some bullshit. And also it'll be easier to start up, because there's a lot of voices in this last bit. It's a lot of talking heads in the last bit, and it'll be easier to do later when we pick it back up. And hopefully I left a short enough margin. That's the most Toshi this time. There's a lot of voices at the end of this. I want to make it as close to the end, and then that way I'll be fresh next week and be able to do the voices better. And also, my phone's gonna die. I left my charger in the other room, and we're at 13%. So after this, we're gonna go to the Discord, and we're gonna play Cult of the Lamb, because we got a whole cult happening in Cult of the Lamb. We're doing pretty decent, if I do say so myself, and we're gonna go play that. So if you've never been in the Discord, the link is in my whatever the place, my TikTok profile. You go to the bio, there's a link tree. It's in there. It should be in there. I don't know. Figure it out. Anyway, and we're gonna go there, and we're gonna live stream some. And that's what we're gonna do now. Quickly before the phone dies.
I have this giant book of cats because I love cats, and Ray sent me this forever ago, and we've been slowly reading it. Does someone want cat facts before? Because this was a lot. This was a lot. Y'all want a palate cleanser at 12%? Because that's where my phone's at right now. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. We can try. Do we want to try? I don't know. Maybe we don't. Facts. I couldn't tell. Is the phone gonna make it? All right. This is on if you should have an indoor cat. Perhaps nothing is as pitiful as the wail of a cat who wants to be on the other side of a door. When it's the front door, many of us take that to mean that our cats won't be truly happy unless they go outdoors. But then again, most cats make the same kind of racket when they want to come inside, or for that matter, when they want to get through any door. Do cats really want to go outside? Do they need to? And even if the answer to both questions is yes, is it really in their best interest? It's more natural for my cat to be outside, argue many cat owners. Dogs go out every day, why not cats? Let's talk about that second point first. The main reasons dogs are walked is elimination, followed closely by exercise. Only the smallest dogs can get enough running indoors. Dogs are pack hunters, which means they walk cooperatively to run their quarry to exhaustion. That can take all day, which means dogs have a natural instinct to run and run and run. You need a lot of open space for that kind of work. Cats, on the other hand, are ambush hunters. They rely on relatively short bursts of very fast running. A hallway of any decent length provides plenty of room for that, and since cats instinctively bury waste, which is why they'll use a litter box, there's no pressing reason to take a cat outdoors. Of course, fresh air and sunshine are good for anyone, human or cat. But is the outdoor life really more natural for your cat? Sure, his wild ancestors lived outdoors, but that was a few thousand years and several hundred generations ago. To top it all off, those ancestors lived in the arid regions of the Mideast, a far cry from the climate and surroundings of the United States today. Once cats were domesticated, they stopped being completely natural. Once they were uprooted from their original habitat, they had to do their best to adapt instincts honed over tens of thousands of years of living in Middle Eastern deserts to their new circumstances. Some of those circumstances, the bitter cold of a Midwestern winter, dogs and wild animals that will turn them from hunter to hunted, and speeding cars and trucks, just to name a few, they can never really adapt to. And we'll continue this next time. Cat walkies. If you get a leash, you can take your cat on a cat walkie. I've done that before. Pawn's too old to exercise now. She gets short bursts of energy, but we don't walkies her anymore. We did used to walkies Bella, though. My cat just flops and won't move. Same. Shit. We fucked up Toby. Damn it. I knew there would be repercussions for this. Shit. Sorry. Oh, God. No, I accidentally said walk, and now Toby wants to... Shit, I said it again. I need to not talk. Who let me on here? Who let me talk? Why do I... Someone teach me a lesson. Someone teach me a lesson. Hi. Alright, it's about that time, and my phone is on 7%. So we're going to migrate to the Discord where if there's a picture of Toby begging for a walk on my Discord server right now, I'm going to die. My cats hate leashes. They try to run away from me as soon as I get near them. You got to leash train them to be comfortable in it because they're not normally disposed to do that. You want to try and harness them very slowly over time while rewarding them. So one, whatever their favorite place to sit is. I should not get started on a detailed description of how to leash train your cats. My phone is about to die. We're moving to the Discord. If I know a way to do that, though. The thing is that I can't get into it because we have no time. The phone is telling me that it's gonna die. So we're moving to the Discord. I'll see you all in like 15 minutes when I get that set up. We'll remind you next week. Okay, good. I'll see you guys next week, every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central Time. You get it.